Hello, everyone. This is Gene Trowbridge of the Trowbridge Law Group, and this is our Thursday episode of TLG Talks. And today we have with us actually a client of the law firm and a friend. He and his wife have become buddies of ours, Bruce Peterson, who is affectionately calling himself the apartment guy.
Well, hopefully a few other people are calling me that too. Either that or branding is not working at all.
That's pretty good. Well, thanks for joining us, Bruce. I appreciate it. This series of interviews that we've been doing, I have a number of people like you who are clients of the firm and are experienced syndicators. And then I had at least one person who would never want to be a syndicator, talk about that. And then I've got a couple rookies who are just, boy, if they can find that first deal, they're ready to pull the switch. And our listeners learn from all of these different interviews. So before we go any farther, I think I'll just do one thing, Bruce. It says here that you have a book out. I wish I had a picture of the book, and I know that the title of it is "Syndicating is a Bitch," and that's on Amazon. You were pretty successful in selling that book when it first came out, weren't you?
Yeah, we're number one bestseller. That was really the only goal other than trying to help people. I just wanted, I'm not looking to make a lot of money on it. I went in with my eyes wide open knowing it was probably not going to do that. But yeah, so far it's been it's been a very well received. We'll put it that way.
Good. Well, it has a catchy title. And I know from my experience with my book that it really serves as a business card. I can't tell you how many clients have come to us simply because they read my book. And so I think that might help you also. So let's get started with the interview. Would you tell us what your business background was before you started sponsoring syndications, and then maybe one or two reasons that you became a syndicator?
Yeah, so my business background, I'm a college dropout, barely got out of high school, so I don't have a background in real estate, corporate finance, real estate development, anything like that. I was a retail guy, without a college degree. I didn't have a lot of options open to me, so I was in retail for about 18 or 19 years, maybe 20 at the most. But I did that until I walked away from that profession, if you will, at the age of 42. I had quasi-retired because I saved my money. I invested it wisely. And, I just knew that retail was going to drive me into the ground. So I walked away, started looking around for somebody to teach me how to invest in real estate. And luckily, I found a great mentor who was also my buyer's representative as a broker. She used to work for management companies herself as regional and asset management. So I got very lucky in the person that I found, but she taught me that, don't go into the single family space like you're thinking and like everybody thinks. You should go straight into apartment complexes. And I think you should syndicate your first deal. So I listened to her because I knew I didn't know what I was doing, and she was highly successful. So I followed her advice and started doing it in 2012, bought my first property, a 48 unit in Austin. And I've syndicated everything I've ever done. And it's been the greatest thing I've ever done professionally.
How much money did you raise on your first syndication?
Well, now, remember, guys, this was 2012. So do not try to apply this to anything today. But that 48 unit I bought for $1.6 million, and I raised a total of $575. I came in at 115, and then so basically I syndicated the additional $460,000.
Did that take a while?
No, really, because I had started my own meetup about 9 to 12 months before that. Okay. And it had grown to about 50 or 60 people in that 6 to 9 month period. And, all my investors, I think, except maybe one or two, came from that meetup group that I put together. Mm-hmm. So they got to know me very intimately, basically, over that 6 to 9 month period. So when it was time, I was the only one really looking to do my own deal in that group. It just happened that way. But when I had a deal, they got to know, trust me. We would boat together, barbecue together. We'd go have drinks together. So they got to know me very well. So when it was time to say, look, I have something I think looks good, they were ready to go.
That's terrific. So what is your overall business strategy in your syndications, and do you think that's going to change over the next 2 or 3 years?
So my business strategy has always been buy stabilized assets where I still have a small value add piece because over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, most of the deep value add, not what a broker is going to call value add, but a true deep value add where it's boarded up, you have terrible occupancy, it's been run into the ground. There's not a whole lot of that left right now. So, our model has been by stabilized assets that we can, improve the operations, implement a few revenue streams that maybe the previous ownership group didn't think about, and drive value that way. Now, the second part of your question is how is that going to change in the future, if at all? And it's already started to morph. We're still doing that, but we're also looking at development now, right? So I wanted to learn the development space because it was just kind of the next step in my evolution, I felt. So we are currently developing a food hall slash like micro retail and micro office in Nashville. I'm part of a team developing a 1.5 million square foot development in Nashville also. So we've started to pivot a little bit into the commercial space and some development as it's getting harder and harder to find deals that pencil in the multifamily space.
That's right. There's a lot of competition today. Are you in the Houston area, or are you in the Dallas area?
I'm in Austin. We own
You're in
all of
Austin.
our multifamily assets in Central Texas, but we're actively looking in Nashville for apartment complexes as well.
Well, Nashville's a hot market.
Yeah.
Everyone likes Nashville. I've gone to Nashville many times myself to have our own workshops, and they always fill up because everyone thinks it'd be a good time to go to Nashville. So, and if you like country music, that's great. In fact, I was there on the day that Johnny Cash died.
Oh,
and it was a while ago, and I was teaching, and after the class was over, the other instructor and I went downtown to the Country Music Hall of Fame to mingle with the crowds who were all mourning.
yeah.
Their black roses with them. They were all mourning the death of Johnny Cash. So that was an interesting time in Nashville. So, do you think that your investors who have gone along with you in the multifamily field are going to easily be converted into the food court and commercial field?
No, right. I got to be honest. It's my job as a syndicator, though, to try to explain this new approach, this different niche. We've already closed our funding round for the deal. So we had no problem raising the money. But I had slower uptake on this deal than I have previous deals. And that's okay. That's expected. The guys that are in my database are used to, either value add or fully stabilized multifamily assets. So, we did a webinar, me and my business partner. He's got the development background that I don't have. So we're doing it together. But we did a webinar to answer questions to kind of put people's minds at ease. And then, of course, I'm available for anybody that had questions along the way. Say, look, Bruce, we've always done apartments. It sounds intriguing to get an IRR in the 20% range. I'm not getting that in many apartment complexes, but man, I don't understand it completely. So I have some questions. So it just took a little bit of education and being open, transparent, and keeping in mind that they weren't used to hearing commercial verbiage or nomenclature, whatever you want to call that. So a little bit of an educational process, but it worked out well.
Well, that's good. Do you think that in the next 3 years you will continue to expand your sphere into more and more commercial?
I do. We have a management company that we recently opened about 2 years ago in Nashville, and that's how we got kind of established there. Is we have our own property management company in Austin, which manages all of our multifamily assets throughout Central Texas. But then 2 years ago, with that same business partner, we opened Parasol Management, which is a commercial management company. So we handle not only multifamily, now we do all the traditional commercial warehouse spaces, retail, office, everything. So yeah, I think we will continue to do more and more commercial. but we're never going to walk away from multifamily. It's the underpinning, I feel, because it's the safest, most rational. It comes with the lowest returns for the most part. For that reason, the returns are still really good, but they're not what you're going to get with the development or some of these other asset classes because there's slightly higher implied risk there.
Right. Well, when I was syndicating, I started out, actually, my first deal ever was a little mobile home park. And I didn't like managing. It was a senior mobile home park in Southern California, and I didn't like managing that. So I said, I won't be doing another mobile home park. But then I went to apartments, and I didn't like managing apartments. And I said to
It's
myself,
hard.
I was making inroads into the broker dealer community to raise money for my projects. And the inroads I was really making were registered reps who had clients who they weren't going to come to me and invest with me. So their clients got a quarterly check to buy groceries. That wasn't the issue. They already had all their income needs. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to build equity. And they wanted, in those days, the message we had was local real estate, building equity, $100,000 minimum, so it wasn't for the everyday investor. And so we went out and built storage facilities. I think I built about 16 storage facilities over the years where we bought the dirt, built the unit, got it up to about a 50 or 60% occupancy, and then sold it off to a company who would be a long-term operator of storage. We didn't want to do that because our market was really looking to, double their money in 3 years and then do it again in another 3 years. So that was our approach to value add. And that worked quite well for us. For a while, I was able to sell all of our projects to Public Storage, who at the time wasn't building their own sites. And so all they wanted to do is buy other people's sites. And so I had a whole storage facility full of orange paint to paint the doors and everything. And we would take them in. We would take them in on the due diligence of the site and the location. Right. And if it checked the box, then they'd give us a letter of intent, and then we'd go ahead and build the project. And at a certain point in time, they'd buy us. So that's what I think a lot of syndicators need to understand who their investors are. I've always said that it's really one of two things. You're either a product syndicator, meaning you know more about a product than anyone else does, and you know what the economic benefits are that come from that product, and you go out and do the product, and then you've got to search for the investors who want that bundle of economic benefits. Or you're a social syndicator, which says you know where all your investors are coming from and you know exactly what they're looking for economically. Then your task is to go out and find the product type and what phase of the life cycle of that product type you're going to invest in. So I think that's where you are. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of people who will come back to you as the projects you've owned, the multifamily you've owned, will sell, and everyone's going to make a lot of money, and they'll be looking to you to do it again. Okay. And then some of the people, as you've already found, will strike out with you and go into commercial. So that's interesting, and that's good. And outside of Texas too, a lot of that too. I do a lot of apartment stuff, and a lot of it's in Texas, but more and more it's in other locations. We actually last year did 3 apartment projects in California, if you can believe it.
Wow.
So that's been few and far between for a while. So let's talk about going back to how you got started, and when you're talking to the people that are in your group, in your meetup and all that, what advice would you have for a rookie Uh, and in saying that, we're having online rookie training camps where we bring 15 people together and we train them over 2 mornings, 3 hours each, to learn all about this. But if you've done a syndication, you can't come because you're not a rookie. So
Right.
we have 15 people, and we always fill it up. It's kind of interesting. But what advice would you give to rookies?
A couple of things would be, the what analysis paralysis thing. You can only learn so much for so long. You have to just get out there and do it. You're never going to be completely 1,000,000% ready. You can't do that. So you just got to get out, take what you've learned, learn as much as you can. Of course, don't go into this blindly. That's reckless. But at some point, you do have to, kind of take the little guide rails off, take the training wheels off, and you got to get out there and just try it and work on it. Make sure you have a good coach or a mentor on your side. And that's got a kind of a stigma attached to it, a negative stigma sometimes, but it shouldn't. Don't call them a guru, right? That has a really bad connotation. But find a coach, somebody that's done it before, and I really think you should have them in your corner because you're going to face things that a book didn't tell you, a course didn't explain to you, a podcast didn't cover, because these are dynamic businesses you're buying into. So that's the biggest thing: is you just got to trust and move forward. Don't be afraid. Be confident, but don't be arrogant. As far as syndicating is concerned, right? I'll teach people how to syndicate. I can teach you the mechanics of how to do a syndication. But what I have to really get through to people is mindset. You're trying to do something you've never done before. And if you walk into a room, a meetup or a real estate conference, and somebody comes up to you and says, Bruce, well, what do you do? Well, I'm going to be a syndicator. Oh, okay. Well, what are you looking for? Because I'm looking to invest in somebody else's syndication. Well, I'm thinking, maybe, a 10 unit, but maybe 100. You have to convey confidence without being arrogant. Don't try to big shot anybody because most of the people you're going to be talking to at that level are going to be, a bigger deal than you, right? They might have more money, make more money. They just don't want the headache of what you're about to undertake. So, that's the two big things I think is mindset, be confident, but don't be arrogant. Don't be aggressive. And then you just got to get out there and start making forward progress. Get into somebody else's deal in their GP if you can. If you can find a legitimate role you can fill in their GP, get in there with them. You don't have to make a lot of money. You're trying to learn from them. So that's a great way to go about it.
I always tell people that there are 4 questions an investor is going to ask you before they invest. And the first question is, hey, Bruce, I like your project. I've got the $50,000, but if I give you my money, what happens if something happens to you? So investors are interested in continuity. Who's going to run the project? Because they can't step in and run the project. So how did you deal with that when you started?
So what happens if a train hits me, a bus hits me? So because of the counsel of my attorney, the man sitting on the other side of this microphone, you taught me to, structure an asset manager that would control the asset, but don't make it tied to you as a human being, as an individual, structured as a company. And the company will be a manager managed company. So we have 2 people in the company. Right. So if something happens to me, heaven forbid, my wife, who's my equal business partner, she can step in and take over for me. Or, again, heaven forbid, if something happens to both of us, well, that company, we have our daughter set to step in if she needs to. So we have a progression plan. We have a way to deal with it. If it's just me and I die or I'm incapacitated, yeah, what happens? The whole group's got to come together now with an emergency meeting and try to decide, oh, no, well, what are we going to do? So they're going to be on the phone with somebody like you trying to help them figure out how to move through it. So we've tried to address that on the front end.
We had a situation last year where at the end of 2019, we put together a large mobile home park project for a syndicator. And in discussing this, it was like 700 spaces with the ability to build another 400. in Louisiana. And in discussing this issue, I said, who's going to be there if something happens to you? The fellow was in his 50s. And he said, well, someone will take over. And I said, that's not good enough. Let's pick someone and let's put someone in the management entity. And so we formed a manager LLC, just like you said, and we put a young fellow. And in there turned out to be a 90-10 ownership split between the serious guy and the young fellow. And 6 months later, the serious guy died of pneumonia.
Oh.
And we didn't miss a beat because the young guy stepped in. All the documents were created and written so that, both either or can sign. Well, one guy isn't going to sign anymore, so the new guy could sign, and we went right ahead. And now I am arguing with the new guy who is the single member of this.
That's where I was going next.
Who are you going to bring in to stop
right.
you? And he is having some resistance to that. But of all the people who should see the importance of that, I don't know why I'm arguing with him so much. But
well, it's part of being a fiduciary, right? Because you're a fiduciary to the LLC.
Right.
And that's part of your fiduciary duty. Don't get hung up on, well, I'm going to have to give somebody part of my company, or now there's a second, voice. Man, look, you have to protect against something that could happen that just happened to you, right? So I know you don't want to relinquish control or give away a piece of the pie, but you owe it to the LLC to protect it and to make sure the continuity is in place.
That's right. In my career, I've been the replacement to either general partner or managing member, whatever it was at the time, 7 times.
Wow.
And never was it because of a death. There were, one guy got divorced, and it was a nasty divorce, and the wife was after all of the assets. And then there was a lawsuit, and then there was a guy who hit his head on a rock skiing and came out a quadriplegic. So there are all, and one guy just disappeared. So there are all sorts of things that can happen. And now during this period of COVID, I think you have to be especially careful of that. So continuity is a big issue when you get started. And the second question I have my people ask is, hey, Bruce, have you done this before? And Bruce, we've all had to answer that question. No, I haven't.
Right.
Because the question is about syndication. But you had a real estate background. So you could say, no, I haven't done a syndication before, but I'm gearing up and I'm training and I've got a support staff, but I have a great experience level in real estate. And that's usually good enough.
Right. And so that's what I try to tell people too, that, yeah, you're going to face that, and don't lie about it, first of all, because some people's personalities are such that they feel they have to massage the truth, or don't do that, man. Because I promise you, astute people will start to see through your BS. They will. And they're gone. As soon as they feel you're disingenuous or you're misleading or not being fully truthful, they're going to leave you. And then that's going to spread. So again, that's why try to tie yourself into an experienced syndicator if you can, a deal sponsor, become part of their deal with them and perform a small role. Have a good coach you can point to that, look, okay, you're right, guys. I've never done this, and I've been upfront about that. But I have, my coach here who's been doing it for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. She's bought assets as a broker. She's managed assets with a property management company. So that was my ace in the hole. That, look, I knew that if I did run up against a problem, I had somebody I can turn to. So again, see if you can bring, if even if it's your deal, see if you can talk an experienced sponsor into coming into the GP with you to lend credibility to you for your investors, also for your bank. Your lender's not going to give you a loan very often if you can't, show somebody somewhere that has experience that's part of the actual team, not just a coach.
No, I think that's right. And where we're going with this conversation is where I've been with every syndicator I've interviewed during this series of interviews. Generally, the advice to rookies is that this is not a do-it-yourself business. You need to build a team, and that team can have many many layers and many looks, but you really need to help yourself out by building a team. One of the things that I've found over time is, and this is really a message to those passive investors out there, that the passive investor really can't look at the syndicator for training in the asset class. If you're going to invest in apartments and you're going to be a passive investor, I think you have the responsibility to go out and learn about apartment investing. And there's a million places you can go, meetup groups and YouTubes and whatever, to learn about apartments. Then when you're ready to invest, the sponsor, Bruce, will tell you all about his deal, but not the whole industry of apartments. I think that the passive investors have some responsibility to educate themselves to the asset class. What do you think about that?
Well, not just a responsibility to themselves. I think that's the only way to safely do it for themselves. Not only to not be a thorn in my side as the deal sponsor, because you're right, I do not have time to field those questions. And I've had to have some conversations. We had an investor come in that I knew well. I knew their background with regard to their educational process, and I felt comfortable bringing this person in. Well, as soon as they got admitted into the deal and we start sending out checks and updates, he had backed out and went back to running his company, and his wife stepped into his place. Well, she has no education.
Right.
He asked one time, and this is weird, but she said to my wife, Stephanie, can you tell me the distribution check that I just got? How much of that distribution check is principal and how much is interest? I'm like, what? I'm like, so I had to call the guy that I knew. I said, look, man, I hate to say this, but she can't call us anymore. It has to come through you. I know you know what you're doing. She has no clue. So yes, it becomes a thorn in my side, but above that, you're being reckless with your own money or your family's money if you don't educate yourself on what you're trying to invest in. It's a Buffettism, right? Only invest in what you know. If you want to invest in it and you don't understand it, go figure it out. And then if you start investing in things you don't understand, you're going to get taken advantage of. You're going to make bad investment decisions yourself. You're not going to know the gotchas to look out for. It's a reckless way to go about your financial life.
Yeah, I think so. And we deal with sophisticated investors. And sophisticated investors, I think that the word sophisticated will have different meanings depending upon what the asset class is. Not too long ago, we did a blind pool to buy racehorses.
Interesting.
Being sophisticated to invest in a blind pool to buy racehorses is a little different than being sophisticated to invest in a fund where we're going to buy a 32-unit apartment building. So I think, and I think that the sponsor needs to know that, depending upon what the asset class is and whether you're building or it's a secure, stabilized asset. The word sophisticated can mean different things at different times. So I think we have to do that. Well, as I just said, most of the people, when you break it down that I've interviewed, have said the very first thing you need to do is get a team. Now, you said you just went out and syndicated. There's another syndicator that told me the same thing, that he wanted to make a splash as being a real company. So his first syndication was like 80 units. And it took him 6 months to raise the money because it was his first one.
Right.
But it was big enough to have property management. And so away he went. And I think that's good. That's good. Well, Bruce, I have enjoyed this. Our time is about up. And on the slide that everyone has in front of you, Bruce Peterson, the apartment guy, and there's your website. I've been to your website, so if anyone else wants to learn more about you, go to the website, and there's always a way to start a communication with you. And I appreciate your time. When you come back from the islands, where you obviously when you come back to the islands and you're ready to do another syndication, I'll appreciate you looking me up and see if we can do some more business.
Of course, I recommend everybody I know to you. So yeah, we'll definitely start rolling again soon, hopefully.
Well, that's great. And say hi to your bride for me, okay?
We certainly will.
All right, I'm going to turn off the recording. If I do this right, we're out of here.